I always thought mirrors were just glass, an object to reflect your face, your outfit, or the world around you. But after what happened with my sister Hannah, I can't even glance at one without a shiver running down my spine. Hannah and I shared an apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and we'd spent weeks decorating it on a budget. One weekend, Hannah came home from a thrift store with a wide grin and a tall, old mirror. "Check this out, Ava!" she exclaimed, dragging the heavy object into the living room. The frame was carved with intricate patterns with vines twisting around what looked like tiny faces. "Creepy," I said, half joking though. "It's vintage," she replied, brushing off my comment. "And it was only $20. Can you believe that?" Looking back, I should have taken that as a warning. Hannah hung the mirror in her bedroom, and for the first few days, everything was fine. And then strange things started happening. One morning, I noticed she was quieter than usual, staring into the mirror as she brushed her hair. "Hannah?" I called. She didn't answer right away, her gaze locked on the glass. Finally, she turned to me, her face pale. "Did you hear something just now?" "No," I replied. "What did you hear?" She hesitated and then shook her head. "Nothing, never mind." I didn't press her, but the unease in her voice lingered. It was a week later when I first noticed something truly odd. I was passing by her room and glanced inside. Hannah was sitting on the edge of her bed, facing the mirror. At first, I thought she was just admiring her reflection. But then I froze. Her reflection wasn't moving. Hannah tilted her head, but the figure in the mirror stayed still, staring back at her with cold, unblinking eyes. "Hannah!" I yelled, stepping into the room. Startled, she turned toward me. I looked back at the mirror, and everything seemed normal again. Her reflection moved as it should. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, annoyed. I thought. I stammered. "Never mind." But deep down, I knew something was wrong. That night, I had the first nightmare. I was in Hannah's room, standing in front of the mirror. The reflection didn't match what I was doing. Instead, it stared at me, smiling in a way that made my stomach turn. Then it reached out of the glass. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. When I told Hannah about it the next morning, she dismissed it as stress. But she didn't seem okay either. Her eyes were hollow, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Over the next few weeks, Hannah began to change. She spent more and more time in her room, always sitting in front of that damp mirror. Her personality shifted too. She became distant, snappy, and at times downright cruel. One night, she stormed out of her room and accused me of sneaking into her things. "I know you've been in my room," she hissed, her eyes wild. "I haven't." I protested. But she didn't believe me. She stormed back into her room and slammed the door. I stood there, shaken, and then I noticed something strange in her shadow. As she moved into her room, her shadow lingered a moment too long in the hallway, even when she was gone. One evening, I decided to confront her. I knocked on her door, and when she didn't answer, I let myself in. Hannah was sitting in front of the mirror, but something was off. Her reflection wasn't mirroring her movements. Instead, it turned to look at me. "Ava," it whispered, though Hannah hadn't moved her lips. I froze. "Help me," the reflection said, its voice cracked and distorted. Hannah's real body turned to me, her face twisting in anger. "Get out!" she screamed. I stumbled out of the room, slamming the door behind me. Terrified, I started researching. I spent hours reading about haunted mirrors, possession, and cursed objects. One story stood out, a legend about mirrors that trap souls. According to the story, these mirrors act as gateways to another realm, and if someone spends too much time gazing into them, their soul can become trapped, leaving their body vulnerable to something else. I knew I needed to do something before it was too late. That night, I armed myself with a hammer and sold 2 things the online forums claimed could break curses. When I entered Hannah's room, she was sitting in front of the mirror again, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Hannah," I called. She didn't respond. I stepped closer, and that's when I saw it. Her reflection wasn't hers anymore. The figure in the mirror was smiling a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far across its face. Its eyes were dark and empty, and its hands pressed against the glass as though trying to break through. "Hannah, we need to destroy it," I said, raising the hammer. Her head snapped toward me, her movements jerky and unnatural. "You can't," she growled, her voice distorted. I swung the hammer, shattering the glass.
The room was filled with an ear-piercing scream as shards of glass flew everywhere. Hannah collapsed to the floor, unconscious. When she woke up, she was herself again, but she didn't remember anything that had happened over the past month. I threw the broken mirror away, making sure to scatter the pieces far from each other. For a while, things went back to normal. Hannah was herself again, and the apartment felt like home. But sometimes when I pass by shiny surfaces, windows, puddles, even the reflection in my phone screen, I catch a glimpse of that twisted smile, and I wonder if it's really gone.